everybody, it's Jo Pyer, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It Fetched It. This week we're going to be talking to the fabulous Sue Lister from Fields and Fireside, who is not only an amazing owner of her own business, but also our LWDG regional coordinator, making sure events happen all over the UK, and hopefully one day we'll be in other countries too. We're going to talk to Sue all about autumn country dog training kit essentials as we go into a new season. So firstly, let me introduce Sue and give her a big welcome. Welcome, Sue. How are you today?
Hi, Jo. I'm very well, thank you. Pleased to be here. How are you?
I'm ready to take notes because I always find changes of season very difficult when it comes to not just what I'm going to wear out, but what I'm going to take out for my dog, because the terrain changes, the weather changes, and we do need to make amendments to our kit, don't we?
Yeah, and if it's anything like last year, it's just like living in a rainforest. It's just wet, muddy and damp, which is pretty nasty.
And have you found as well, I'm sure, it's staying warmer longer, so we don't get that September or brisk cold snap that used to come in as we went back to school. You start putting on your coat. I found, and even if I look back at Facebook pics over the years, September, October, I'm still in like t-shirts and jeans or t-shirts and shorts. It's warm.
Yeah, last season, if I remember back, I started beating in October and had layers of clothes on for fighting through brambles, and we were just absolutely sweltered. It was so warm. It was really difficult, to be honest, to know what to wear for the best, because it was really warm right into what should have been, like you say, starting to hit that winter cold snap. I think I got one day out where it was -5 and it was lovely and crisp and the ground was hard. But apart from that, it was just hot and wet and muddy for months.
Yeah, because although this podcast isn't about what we wear as humans, the reality of it is loads and loads of shooting kit and hunting kit is made for somebody being out in cold weather. Certainly in the UK, when you look at heavy tweeds or heavy jackets, you add that type of clothing to a 17-degree day in the UK, and it's just not ever going to be fun, is it?
No, we're not really built for it, are we? With the gear, and we're just not used to it. So whether that will now be the norm, people are saying it will be. It's only going to get warmer and wetter. I don't know if we'll really, going forward, get those really cold, deep sort of freezing winters again. But
And for our dogs and our training kit, I found definitely like the change of weather, and certainly like from, I think in Wales, it rained from October till about 2 weeks ago. It was like everything was wet. My dummies were wet. Leads were getting wet. It was just miserable. So let's talk a little bit about things like, let's start with like leads and collars. What are our options for our dogs when we're trying to take them out in an autumn environment which is wet and warm and muddy?
I think there's now, when I think back to when I had my first spaniel, it was just a normal leather collar, and I had a rope lead rein because I spent my time around horses and going to little agricultural fairs. So that's what I had. It must have been fairly manky and stinky by the time I'd finished with it. But now there is so many options on the market. I've just recently seen some new ones where the collars are almost like a honeycomb material. So they're light and they dry out really quickly and they let air through so the dog doesn't get a hot spot under the collar. There's all sorts of new technology now coming through. Biothane is great for autumn winter because as we know, it's wipeable, so you don't have the trouble all the time of coming home with a muddy, stinky lead that you've got to wash and then wait for it to dry. So yeah, there's lots of products now coming on that it probably means you've got different products possibly in autumn, winter, but at least you've got then choice, something that's a bit more robust.
There are options out there, like you just said, for us to wipe things down and keep things tidy. But what about things like, I found this already, in the summer, we are very good with poop bags and poop in getting it, not keeping it in our car, but we're very aware and very conscious of how warm it is. Going into autumn where it's staying like that, are there things where we can put our poop and poop bags into to keep control of the smell? And again, it's just keeping things clean and tidy.
Yeah, there are quite a few products now on the market for the old poo bag storage, so you don't have to stick it in your pocket or in the back of your vest where you then forget about it and find it weeks later. I think we've all done that. Yeah, there's some neoprene bags that you can have that are pretty good at keeping the smell in. They're really effective. They're waterproof. You can attach them to equipment you've already got or pop them on a strap. They come in different sizes. They're really useful. Like I say, they're really good at storing poo bags till you get back and keeping the smell in. But yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it, where it's just remembering to dispose of them when you get back and not leave them in the boot of your car.
What about things like, because as we go into the season, we go from like training where maybe we're in one field to walking miles with our dog over a large range of different terrains, maybe terrains that the dog's not used to, maybe areas of the country the dog's not used to. So what other things could we be taking with us that make sense as we're going into like autumn?
Yeah, I think really it's that thought of, I think our dogs are capable of doing so much, and they've got lots of energy and they will go for walks and walks for miles for us. But if you're going somewhere, particularly if you're traveling or you're going to stay somewhere different, or you're doing something over those autumn winter months that's different to what you have been doing in spring and summer, be that going hiking or mountain climbing, or you're going to start working the dog, it's having that thought beforehand of, is the dog ready? It's okay for you, you're going to put some big heavy boots on and you've got the kit for that activity, but we sometimes forget about the dog. There was a story recently in the press, I think the owners shared it really just for awareness because they were horrified that the poor dog was in pain, but they'd gone climbing, they'd scaled a mountain, it was full of scree and loose rocks, and the poor dog had all the skin scraped off the bottom of its paws, and they had to get mountain rescue out to rescue it because the poor thing couldn't walk. And they obviously did, it's not something they did on purpose, but it's just that awareness of, if your dog has been mainly training and walking in parks on grass, and then you're going to do something different, it might be that dog's not ready to do that activity. So either build up slowly to it and improve fitness and improve their ability to do that activity, or think about getting some kit that will protect them. So you can now get some really cool like boots that you can put on the dogs that have got protection on the bottom of them. Just make sure they're comfortable wearing those before you go and do that activity, because they do look quite comical when they first put them on and they walk a bit weird, but they're really cool. Again, I've seen some of those recently that are they're brilliant. They fit really well, they don't fly off, and they're designed for activities like that. And again, if you're going to be perhaps working your dog for the first time, if it hasn't ever been out in the field, then it's again that forethought of, is its fitness there for a start. You need to build up to that. It's no good expecting it to just work a full day if the fitness isn't there. And think about perhaps the environment it's going to be working in, and have you got things with you when you go out that will enable it to work for a full day, because it's a huge energy output, and dogs don't know when to stop sometimes, especially as we know spaniels will just run themselves into the ground and just run themselves ragged. So it's having to think really about the type of kit that you need to have with you to give the dog the best opportunity of enjoying the day out and recovering well afterwards as well.
When I first put Rex in a drying coat, He'd lived in a kennel all his life. Bless, I don't think he'd ever seen a drying coat. Put a drying coat on him, and he stood there and he looked at me and he wouldn't move. And Ella was wandering around in her like bathrobe, gloriously having a hotel day, and he was just like, he just looked so petrified, and he wouldn't sit down, he wouldn't do anything for me. And it's taken me ages of putting it on and off him for short periods for him to even say that he can now walk in it. But you're quite right, isn't it? With the boots, they're the same. They're like, can I actually move with these things on my feet?
Yeah, they are quite funny when they have to get used to things like that. And then when they work out they can still move in it. My two spaniels are the same. One loves having a drying coat on, anything on, thinks it's fantastic. The other one thinks she can't move or even sit down in a drying coat. She just stands there. But she's never particularly liked things that constrict her or things on her anyway. But yeah, the other spaniel, I had to get him last year a protection vest because he was just so hell for leather in undergrowth. And a couple of times he had near misses with scratches and scrapes. And I just thought, I really don't want him getting skewered by something in his chest. And I sourced a protection vest out for him. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, dogs shouldn't wear anything when they're working. But if they're working with you and they are closely monitored and and the vest fits correctly, then, I mean, he wore it and he didn't get snagged or anything once. The main thing, it protected him and he didn't suffer any injuries on his chest or under his arms, under his legs rather. So that for me was the most important thing. And I think it goes back to what we've always said. If a piece of equipment fits right and is used in the right way, then that's the thing you've got to be aware of and got to check first.
Because these vests, these like protection vests, they're used massively in the States. And I know their terrains, etc., are not exactly the same as ours, but in many places they are very similar to ours. Like you said, and I think it's a case of your dog is working pretty close in front of you. It shouldn't be too far away from you.
Yeah, especially with spaniels. And I was quite careful that it wasn't an environment where he was going to go swimming in it or anything like that. Having said that, it's totally waterproof and very light. But yeah, this is probably another question for a podcast, because recently I've been talking to a company that makes these things and they're Scandinavian. And field sports and hunting is huge in Scandinavian countries. And what I found amazing was everything there is brightly coloured, pretty much. The gear the dogs wear is brightly coloured, even to the point that, especially for like HPR breeds, they've got different colours at either side. So at a distance, you can see which way the dog is facing. But all the gear that people wear and that dogs wear is brightly coloured so that you can spot them easily. And it's from a safety point of view, they're not going to get shot accidentally. And you can see where your dog is at all times. And I often think, gosh, that'd be great in the beating line, because I wouldn't lose where people are, because everybody's wearing green and brown or camouflage.
Yeah, and I can think if you're stalking, I can understand why you would want to merge in.
Yeah.
And even maybe for some other types of hunting. But I think on a driven shoot, we are not trying to hide, are we? We are very aware of the speed we go in, how much we're pushing the birds, but we're not trying to hide from the birds. In fact, we almost want the birds to know we're there so they go the direction we want them to go.
Yeah, totally. And from a point of view of wearing something that's, say, bright orange, when your dog's working in thick undergrowth, it acts as a visual aid. So yeah, I think now more and more people are becoming aware of protection for the dog and making sure the dog is as comfortable and as protected as possible, and that they can recover quickly, and that ultimately you put a lot of money, time and effort into a dog. So I think more and more times now you are seeing people being aware of making sure the dog is kept warm, if they're stood still during lunch breaks, things like this on a shoot day. Whereas before you would have been laughed at probably at one point for even putting a coat on, a waterproof jacket, something that means that while they're just stood, they're not getting cold and shivery. But I think now people are more aware of it's just a sensible thing to do to keep their muscles warm so that they don't end up with injuries unnecessarily. We do that we would do that as people, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to where we were talking about the weathers, now we're looking at like carrying drying coats, waterproof coats, but also cooling coats.
Yeah, exactly. And again, technology's come forward leaps and bounds. There are more and more products out there now aimed at keeping dogs cool on hot days or keeping them warm when the temperatures have really plummeted, keeping them dry, getting them dry as quick as possible so they're not sat there getting shivery and cold. Products now they're even producing them with the same material and with the same sort of technology that you would for humans, for our sort of gear. I'm seeing the same sort of materials and the way they're being made coming through now from the people that design and produce these items, so that they're lightweight and they are waterproof and they're windproof. Because again, why wouldn't we want them to be protected? Yes, they're dogs. Yes, they've got coats, and some dogs have got better coats than others to cope with going into cold water and swimming and things. But we want them to be able to work for a full day without getting injuries.
What about things like we always tell our members carry a first aid kit for the field, but are there extra things that we want to be carrying with that? Because we are seeing warmer weather, so we are seeing more adders, we are seeing more ticks, certainly at this time of year. Is there things like this we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, ticks are hugely on the rise, aren't they? We're hearing more and more about ticks all over and earlier in the season. So definitely keep a tick remover. I always keep one in the car because really you want to get them off as quick as possible when you see them. And for yourself, that's another thing. Check yourself when you've been somewhere that's rife with ticks. We've had instances this summer quite early on where there were a couple of adder bites around some of the reservoirs where people walk their dogs. So be aware of that. If you live in the area, you probably will be anyway. If you're going to be travelling somewhere to stay in a part of the country you're not familiar with, then again, just do a bit of research, I would say, before you go. If there are adders in the area, just one thing to do is check which of the local vets has the anti-venom, because when you're in a panic and your dog's been bitten, then you just need to know where to go straight away really quickly and where to ring and say you're on the way. A bit of research about that.
Obviously, like you touched there on ticks, I think I'll see if I can find it and put it into the show notes. There is also a map. It's like done by one of the agencies, which shows areas where they've got quite a large number of ticks in the area. But just go back about ticks. We do need to be careful for ourselves as well to prevent Lyme disease, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. More and more instances of that, that you hear of. It's really important if you're going somewhere. To be honest, even no matter how hot it is, I always wear long trousers and boots because I tend to get bitten by everything going. So I just try and protect myself as much as possible anyway. But yeah, definitely, as you're checking your dog, do check yourself for ticks as well. The other thing that dogs tend to get, obviously, throughout the summer as well, perhaps, is stings. So a lot of people I know carry Piriton with them. And again, it's just a bit of awareness of what to do if your dog gets stung, and perhaps carry some Piriton with you. It is actually Piriton that you need to have with you in your first aid kit. And if you're not sure, just check with the vet what the dosage should be and what they recommend. But yeah, usually a dog will get stung at some point in their life because they do tend to try and chase bees and wasps.
Yeah, and it is hard for us because the things that like where we're talking about ticks now and bites, they for us as well. So it's worth having something not just for the dog's comfort, but for also our own comfort. And when we're looking at things like ticks and Lyme disease, a friend of mine recently has been in hospital with like it can get as severe as like inflammation on the brain and spinal cord. And people don't realize that the ticks can be that much of a danger to us as humans, but just like knowing what you're looking for. You're looking for it's like a bite mark that looks like a bullseye to begin with. Then that turns into things like fever, muscle, joint ache, things you might think, oh, I've picked something up like a cold or fever, just check yourself over, look for that like first initial bite position or that bite mark. And also, like, it gets worse, looking for things like having a severe headache, feeling like arthritis, particularly in your knees, everything's feeling swollen, the rash expanding out from the normal area, things like heart palpitations, just all these things. If you're not sure, go see the doctor, because if it's identified early, it can be treated, but it's still a long time to recover, isn't it?
Oh yeah, a long time. Again, like you, a friend of mine had it and ended up in hospital. And yeah, it's a horrible thing to get, and it causes real problems and stays around in your system for a long time. So it's really unpleasant. To be honest, with the dogs, yes, you'll probably see them and just pick them off. But yeah, with yourself, it's to be really careful about them. And like I say, if you are going to a high-tech area, just think about wearing some clothes to protect yourself while you're there. But the map would be really good to get up, Jo. I think that's a really useful thing to have.
I'll definitely find it, and we'll put it up. We'll put it up in the members group as well. And just for things for people to understand, Lyme disease can affect dogs as well. So it can lead long term to, not to scare people, to things like kidney disease, more severe symptoms. So it's not easy to find the bite mark on the dog. So just looking out for it, but then looking out long after you've seen the tick, what's happening with your dog afterwards. Are they seeming to be a little bit down, a little bit like the things we see in humans that humans can sort of vocalize, are we seeing them in our dogs? But obviously maybe not thinking, just the dogs off, and again, just take them to bed and make sure. Talking about, so we've talked about ticks, obviously, and your company, all the things that we about, like tick removers, first aid kits, they can get these all from you, can't they?
Yeah, they can. Obviously, we don't sell the medication like the Piriton, but again, speak to vets about that. But yeah, the first aid kits, tick removers, they can get from us. The other thing I would say is on the bites and things is, if you see your dog when it's been stung rather, with any symptoms like increased heart rate, any swellings, do contact the vet, because like us, they can go into anaphylactic shock. So it's just things like that to be aware of. I would always recommend, if you've got a dog, do a basic first aid course. There's plenty out there. It's just the awareness of when something happens, knowing what to do, or at least knowing what to look out for and when to ring the vet. And if in doubt, ring the vet anyway, but especially if you're away from home, knowing what to look for and just having some essentials with you in terms of a first aid kit. I always keep one in the car, a human one and a dog one, to be honest. It's just always in there.
Yeah, and I think it's worth keeping everything in our cars where we can, because even if we're just talking about things like getting wet, getting muddy, having a set of clothes for ourselves and a drying coat for the dog can make you far more comfortable coming back than having to sit there in sloppy gear, maybe not thinking it all through, and then being like, oh my God, I've got to drive home now, soaking wet, my boots covered in mud. You're far better off having a pair of tracky bottoms in the back and a pair of trainers, just to give you that comfort. And also things like making sure the prevention stuff is there, like skincare stuff for us, paw care stuff for our dogs. They seem weird things to be thinking about, but they can make all the difference between you having a comfortable day out and you having a miserable day out, can't they?
Totally, especially if you've got a long drive home. And this is where you start. I don't know about you, but I have a bag that just lives in the car, especially through winter. So it's got drying coats in it. It's got a spare jumper and stuff for me, and spare pack-a-mac thing. And it's got a coat just in case they get cold, that's more of a warming coat for the dogs. Then there's like the paw cleaner to get the worst of the mud off. And you end up with a almost like a travel bag thing, like you, as if you were taking a baby off for the day or something. But it's really handy to keep in there all these essentials, the first aid kit, any sort of energy bars, recovery stuff. If you're going off for a day somewhere and you've got a long drive, then at least both you and the dog are comfortable on the way back, because you'll get somewhere and then it hasn't forecasted, but then you get torrential rain or something, and or inevitably a dog will find a bog to go and roll in.
A fox poop or
Yeah.
something,
That's the worst.
anything that they can find that's going to make it smell horrendous.
There are specialist dog showers and cleaners you can buy. Tell you what I have, I have a camping pump shower thing that you can buy, and especially in winter I fill it with hot water, so by the time I need it it's still quite warm. And it's got a little shower head on the end and you pump it and you can clean the dog off with that. I have, however, now had a mixer tap fitted at home outside, so when I get home they can get hosed off and it's not freezing cold water.
Lengths we go to. Okay, I think I'm just trying to think if there's any other sort of kit that we need to cover, because
Well,
we
in
want people to
terms
think
of
about
like,
everything, don't we?
yeah, in terms of just going back to that, when you're getting cold and wet and horrid and wet and muddy paws and stuff, you mentioned paw balm and things. Paw balm is great for just soothing dogs' paws, because not only can they get sort of a bit itchy and they really irritate the paws themselves, don't they, if they get like itchy and wet, but also nettle stings. The paw balm's really good for nettle stings, as is the Piriton again. Hibby scrub is one thing that I always keep, and Lucillin in the cupboard. So the spray, the antiseptic spray, and the Hibby scrub for any hot spots. But it's great if a dog has been wet and damp and they've chewed. Sometimes they'll chew and not leave an area alone and it ends up becoming a hot spot. It's great for that. Or any bramble rashes, it's really good for that too. Some dogs like really go at it and don't leave it alone. And also like with nettle rash, that they can really go insane when they've got nettled. So the paw balm's great. Lucillin is a really good product as well to have for that. And again, both of these we sell online, because to be honest, I've used them myself that much. Any sort of hot spots that they create, because they really go at a spot and don't leave it alone, you can just spray them on or rub them on, and it doesn't matter if they lick it, it's not going to do them any harm. But things like that are really good to have, just to give them some sort of relief from it.
To finish up what is a fabulous podcast full of loads of information to help people, the one thing I want to know is about dummies. Now, this is my biggest bugbear, is when dummies get wet, because they don't want to dry as quickly as other things, do they?
No.
What's our alternatives? Is there like a way to quickly dry them? Or is there like alternatives to just normal canvas dummies we could use when the weather is really horrible?
Yeah, and I get asked this all the time, and it's dummies are the sort of things that, because they're made with heavy duck canvas, they do take quite a while to dry and they can absorb quite a bit of moisture. And if you're not careful, they'll go moldy really easily. So in terms of drying them, first of all, washing them, I wouldn't go putting them on a boil wash in the washing machine, because they're not going to last very long and you'll probably damage your washing machine, to be fair. If you do want to put them on a really cold wash, what I would recommend is putting them in something like an old pillowcase. You can buy specialist wash bags, but if you've got an old pillowcase, great. And then either put them on a rack or hang them up somewhere to dry thoroughly. They really do need to be bone dry, because the slightest bit of moisture, if you then stick them back in a bag or in the back of your vest, or even stacked in the garage or something, they will go moldy, and then it's really difficult to get the mold out. I tend to, in winter a lot, you go back to like things like either the PVC or the water dummies, because they're just as good, and you just wash them and then they're good to go again. So I use those a lot in winter. But apart from that, yeah, just scrub it in a bucket of water if it's a canvas dummy, but leave it to dry thoroughly. So have some that are always being dried and some that are dry.
Fabulous. And for people wanting to go and have a look at your website, where will they find it?
It is www.fieldsandfireside.co.uk.
And you sell loads of dog training equipment. It's not so much human equipment, is it? It's more everything for the dog.
Yeah, more for the dog. We do sell sort of vests and bags and things like that, but yeah, more for the dog, first aid, things for the field, but anything. We're sort of always open to customers as well, giving us new ideas and asking us to stock things and bits and pieces. But yeah, most of the first aid things we sell, barbed wire covers, things like that for out in the field too.
Oh yeah, because we didn't touch on barbed wire covers, and I love mine. They are so helpful, aren't they?
Yeah, I used mine so much last year. And it's a horrible thing, isn't it? It causes so many injuries to dogs, but also it's just really annoying because you catch your own trousers on it. When you spent a fortune on gear, you don't be ripping them every time you go over a barbed wire fence.
Because I'm only like 5 foot and fat, I desperately need it, because some people, they can push them down and basically step over, can't they?
Yeah, no, I'd fall over.
Yeah, I'm like literally, I have to put something in to protect me as I waddle back my butt over it. So yeah, but also I think they're really good for teaching the dog. This is the point where you're crossing here, rather than letting the dog make a choice and misjudge and then cut themselves open.
Yeah, totally. And I think that also goes back to our group experts will always say but a dog should be taught to jump over something on command.
Yeah.
And if you haven't told it to jump over that obstacle, then it's not just, it should just sit and wait, because yeah, you just see them going hell for leather over the fences, and some of them they've got more than one strand of barbed wire on it, so it's quite easy for them to catch themselves.
It always worries me as well, because on the way out, they might be just jumping themselves. On the way back, they might be carrying a bird, and your weight has changed, but also your sort of point of balance has changed. And you see so many of them where they catch and think, oh my God, if it'd just been handled a little bit better, perhaps that wouldn't have happened. And they're always deep cuts. Like, same with the horses. Like, you can't stop horse by covering the whole field in barbed wire covers. But they literally, barbed wire goes in and literally cuts, like, normally if they're like an L shape on there, like a big flat,
Yeah.
it's vile.
Yeah.
So it's just knowing about those things, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And that's where really, especially if you're going to be working your dog, you really need to have a small first aid kit with you with the essentials in it, I would say, or at least have it somewhere really close, because it's really important to be able to wash that wound and stem the flow of blood if need be, just while you get it to a vet. It's never going to replace needing to go to the vet, but it will give you that immediate emergency care while you get the dog straight to the vet.
Fabulous. Thank you for joining us for another amazing podcast episode. For anybody who needs any help thinking about what can I do as the weather changes, please just contact Sue. She's fab. She'll help you. The whole reason she set up her business was to provide people with a place they could go and ask loads and loads of questions. Certainly if they were like beginners and novices and really didn't know whether they should have a green dummy or an orange dummy and why there was a difference. So please go along to her and she will help you out. That's all for this week. We hope you've enjoyed. Please review, please subscribe, and we look forward to talking to you all next week. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.